What's up, guys? Today we're doing Celebi and ADVOU and why it is good. Those 100 base stats across the board, they're pretty good. Grass typing is notable defensively, and Psychic can be a drag sometimes, but it can also be a boon. So we will explore all that and more, ranging from Celebi's impressive move pool to how its unpredictability lets it function, and how it's sometimes really difficult to deal with, even if you know exactly what's coming. Overall, these are traits of a good Pokemon. So let's get started by saying that every single Celebi ever will be carrying the item leftovers. And that's pretty much all you can know for a guarantee. So, the trademark Celebi set that it is most known for and stereotypically associated with is the defensive set, running around this much HP, having Recover, and usually Leech Seed. Now, Leech Seed is amazing, of course, because it saps the opponent while healing you. In a common condition like Sandstorm, that's 12% on something that's not going to heal, other than from maybe a Wish Pass or perhaps Celebi's own Leech Seed. Stereotypically, this set also is bold because it likes to switch into Snorlax and help fend off things like Metagross, while also not being immediately terrified of uh, physical Salamence, Aerodactyl, and sometimes even T-Tar if push comes to shove. So the amount of defense it runs can really vary, but generally something around this number is safe to assume. Then it can run some speed for Jolly Tyranitar, then can run some special attack. It can run some special defense for things like Gengar Ice Punch and electric type hidden power ices like Zapdos, and even stray Fire Blasts. But this is the stereotypical set that helps fend off Snorlax, notably. So these EVs look very scattered, and that's because Celebi is a Pokemon that's very hard to it's hard to suss out what EVs it's using, even when you're facing it. You can make a guess of uh, what kind of spread it's running. Like you can guess it's definitely physically defensive, but it's really going to be hard to tell how much defense exactly it has, unless you do a million calcs, and even then, it's like, well, it could be this much, but it also could be this much, and that leaves a lot of assumptions, or ideally, educated, informed guesses about what else it's running. Like if it's got some Spadef because the guy's team needs to soak Starmie Ice Beam a little better, or if it's got some special attack for Dugtrio, as we'll see in a minute, things of that nature. So it could also run more defense, obviously, but uh, yeah. So Leech Seed, other moves. It's notable it doesn't really run this as much as it did in the past when Advance was the main gen, but it was also notable for having like awesome support moves like Heal Bell and Perish Song. Heal Bell is obviously awesome team support, and Celebi doesn't have to waste it on itself because of Natural Cure being incredible in a tier with tons of Toxics, Gengar's Will-O-Wisp, even Snorlax's Body Slam since it's a prime counter. That's huge, but Heal Bell helps its teammates, and Parasong is great for last Pokemon setup like most traditionally Suicune and Snorlax, which Celebi wards off throughout the game with Leech Seed, but at the end of the game, you might need that Parasong for uh, the game winner. So it's also obviously, if their last Pokemon is like a DD Mence or something, then you just plant Celebi in front of it, and it's like, okay, well, now he can't sweep me. So yes. However, more traditionally, you're going to want your Celebi to go on the offensive at least a little. So, Psychic, good stab move. Gengar, big. Heracross switching, Salamence switching, really useful. And you can also go with a second stab move, which is Hidden Power Grass, and that is primarily for Tyranitar, because sometimes you're going to have to brawl with it, and sometimes you're going to actually want to hit those water types you're switching in on, like Milotic, Suicune, Swampert especially. Swampert is very likely to, not initially, but on a Leech Seed or a Recover, stay in an Ice Beam, just to get some more lefties in the case of a Recover, because you can protect after for even more, or just mostly that, but if you expect the leech seed, then you force the recover after, or you force it somewhat, depending on how much special attack investment the perk has, how much special defense the Celebi has, and so that their switch-in doesn't have to eat a leech seed. Because something like a Snorlax in sand, an offensive Snorlax in sand, eating leech really, really sucks. Because you're going to want that Snorlax to take a hit or two, and leech impedes it, so it's better to put on the pressure. It's better to be pressured less, of course. So, um, yeah, that is why you would run HP Grass, and also Tyranitar. But another big reason is Dugtrio. Dugtrio is a thorn in Celebi's side. Celebi is the reason why Dugtrio runs Hidden Power Bug. So, if you ever doubt Celebi's influence on the tier, that's it. Yes, so, and that is why the lots of defense helps, because Dugtrio, I believe that the number for avoiding a Dugtrio KO with Celebi from Jolly, anyway, excuse me, is somewhere around the 390s. So obviously, but the more defense, the better, because you can't count on it being at pristine health all the time, especially when it's switching into so many attacks as you would expect from a defensive Pokemon. Uh, because unless you want to use Recover every single time you eat a Zapdos Thunderbolt. So now, well, some people like doing that because in Generation 3, Recover has an incredible 32 PP, but generally not preferred. Another underrated move is, I should also mention that for bulkless Dugtrio, then you will run 40 or 44 special attack to guarantee the OHKO on bulkless. 40 guarantees it on 4 HP or 0 HP, because most of them will run 4 HP or defense for CB Tar Rock Slide. And if they randomly throw it in special defense, then 44 is the number. But, you know. So if you're EV crunching, then keep that in mind. It might save you a few. But even if you have 40 versus the Force But F1, it's still a 94% chance to kill it. So anyway, another underrated move is Reflect. This does not get a ton of use, but it is recognized as an option. Because it is, I mean, obviously it helps a ton with Dugtrio, but even just physical attackers in general, like your CB Tars and your CB Grosses and your Arrows and your Menses and Snorlax, it's just incredibly useful. It's so, like, it's not just Celebi that it makes hard to kill, it's everything becoming harder to kill. Your CB Gross, blowing up and slicing through Skarmory, not going to happen. So, it's an incredible tool. Very, very useful. And Psychic and HP Grass. HP Grass's lone move is also useful, of course. It's just that Gengar is a threat, and sometimes a lot of people want that security against it. Yeah. So Reflect is a more recognized option, of course. Now, some players, very few, sometimes are on light screen, but I must say this is more of a specific auxiliary option for teams for players who are using teams that they really know how they function. It's not just light screen for the sake of light screen. It's not something you slap on because, but it is mentioned. However, Reflect is the more standard. And yeah, you can have other options like Hidden Power Fire if you're trying to wear down Skarmory. Skarmory is huge thorn in defensive Celebi's side because immune to sand. I mean, Leech Seed doesn't really bug it that much, but it's also gonna, it, it it really needs that extra hit with HP Fire sometimes if you're really trying to bring the Skarmory down gradually. Since you are running a defensive team, and most defensive teams don't exactly have offense to feast on Skarmory's presence. I mean, some offensive teams don't really have offense to feast on Skarmory's presence, so sometimes you're going to have to go with the gradual approach. And it also is good against Fortress, and it can even tap other Celebi who are looking to absorb a Leech Seed. It's common in games with defensive Celebis because, Leech Seed only has 16 PP, which is crucial. Now that we're on the topic of Skarmory, Fortress, and Spikes, then Leech Seed, of course, goes really well with Spikes. But 16 PP can really, really bite it if you over-rely on it. It's a great tool, but in longer games, over-reliance on it and just spamming it every which way instead of when you really need it, then it will very often bite you, especially when a Rest Zapdos switches into it. or when you're using it as a counter to Suicune, both of them have pressure. Not sustainable in the long run. You got to have another plan. So HP Fire is also nice for Metagross who resists Psychic and HP Grass and is like, all right, well I'm at insert low health range at like anywhere from like 10 to well maybe not 10. I could probably live HP Grass from there, but like 15 to 30%, and you're like, all right, well I'm still out of range, so I get to take something out with a boom and you finish it off. And then you would run either Psychic or Giga Drain if you were still looking for Dugtrio. But the lower BP Giga Drain has, as opposed to HP Grass, means that your calcs against Dugtrio are going to be not so hot. So, I mean, if you have spikes, then that helps. But yeah, so this is the classic defensive Celebi. I don't believe I'm missing any options, any notable options. So yeah, that looks to be about it. So, Calm Mind Leech Celebi, which is Calm Mind, Recover, Leech Seed, and mostly Psychic. And you might be thinking, well, what the heck? Isn't this just the defensive set with Calm Mind? Yes and no. Yes, because yeah. No, because I'm not going to say it functions more as more of a sweeper, but it definitely gives you more offensive options. Now, think about so I think it's established enough as its own set to warrant its own spot. Um, I guess before I go there, I should come back to this for a second. This set can, move stuff aside. It can run calm and special defense EVs, with some defense, but it makes a huge difference in taking special attacks like ice beams from waters and HP ices from electrics and like crunch from pursuing Tyranitar. I mean, similar move sets, of course. But yeah, and it can also go fast or faster because sometimes Heracross and offensive Suicune are annoying. Yes, actually, if your main or slash only counter to offensive Suicune is a defensive Celebi, then you will be outrun into a KO'd. So some people say, well, still bulky, so I'm going to go up here, and as a bonus, I'm less threatened by the terrifying Heracross, one of the few Pokemon that is able to consistently OHKO Celebi. So, I mean, obviously, it wants to be careful about the Psychic. Remember the Swampert Ice Beam principle, but if you're fast HP Grass, then you're a lot less pressured because you can both threaten the Pert and threaten the Heracross, and you can spin that to your advantage. Anyway, now that that's covered, Celebi can feasibly go even faster and just like 300s for like Ments and stuff, Ments and things around there, but generally it will prefer the bulk. However, the Suicune benchmark is crucial because Celebi is often one of the team's better defensive options against Suicune. So, yeah, so the Calm Mindset. This is pretty much your standard Leech Celebi, except it can also force the issue. For example, we spoke of HP Fire dinking Skarm as it tried to spike. And of course that is nice, but the leech set, the pure leech set, sometimes has problems forcing the issue, against your Snorlax and Suicune. So you have to have other options, or you have to fit Parasong in there somehow, which is a really tough ask. And Calm Mind is a way to kind of have your cake and eat it too, because you smack Skarm around. I mean, you don't really smack it, but with Leech Seed, let's say you leech it on the switch, you Calm Mind as a spike, and then you Psychic. Now things are happening. It's not going to enjoy that, especially if it Whirlwinds you. It's still taking Leech after that, and whatever got Whirlwinded in got healed up if it wasn't already full. It's more offense in the way of threatening Zapdos, who just wants to sit on you. Snorlax and Suicune are obviously big ones too, but yeah, and it. So I think it's big. Other spread-wise, it's pretty much the same thing as the other one. With your bold or your calm. Usually bold though. Usually bold since it's calm minding. With your speed options available, of course. HP Grass also an option, but most players prefer to Dugtrio the Tar and have the overall superior coverage of Psychic, which is great for Salamence, of course, Heracross. So, yeah, Calm Mind prefers the higher BP of Psychic. So yeah, this is a very notable set, just like the defensive one. Worth noting that the defensive set also, since it is Scarm bait, then Magneton, of course, makes a great partner. But as we will continuously explore in this video, then Magneton and Celebi do compound quite a Dugtrio weakness, but we'll get to that. Of course, Celebi can handle it itself, but something to consider given spikes and all that. So this is defensive Calm Mind, pretty much the same. You know, your 270 or your beating Endeavor Pert, and then your bold and your bolds. Most people go max, but your good amount of defense, some special defense. With Mono Psychic, you don't really run special attack because you're not really going to be OHKOing Doug. So, all right, offense, even after a Calm Mind. So, offensive Calm Mind, the other side of that coin. So, this is thinking, well, you are not walling this with Scarm because it is max special attack. The standard set is timid, used to hang around this much for Salamence because this last move was Psychic. And, now it would probably go up to, nope, a little more, 308 for Moltres and a lot of bulky Gengar. You can, get into a whole speed creep war thing here. But the reason you don't go max is because with HP Fire, you're not tying Mens, Flygon, Zapdos, Jirachi, so you may as well get some bulk out of it. If you want to tie other HP Fire Celebi, go for it. But let me tell you, that is not a scenario you ideally really want happening. And the bulk is notable. It's kind of the Suicune principle. Suicune is really bulky, naturally. Celebi is too. But when it's just 0 HP, I mean, it's still going to take a hit. It's not like it suddenly turns into a paper plane. But let's just say you appreciate all the bulk you can squeeze out of it. So most players prefer to give it some. Pokemon is a game of inches, so don't waste your bulk EVs. Yeah, offensive Calm Mind. This is just, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. But I didn't. Don't you hate that? Anyway, so, your offensive Sand Spikes teams like your T-Tar, Gengar, Scarm, Swampert are really not going to like this. You have to get it out in front, though, because if you switch it, if it's already getting harassed by spikes when it comes in, then that takes so much threat potential away from it. So ideally, you want to do something like force the Swampert in, grab your free Calm Mind, and just start hitting things. Of course, this set does not really love Blissey, and it will often get worn down. So it most often fits on offensive teams that specialize in either capitalizing on or removing Blissey. The former, the capitalization, you bait Blissey in, maybe you Psychic and Giga Drain it once or twice, because Giga Drain against Blissey gives you a lot of health back. And you force a soft-boiled, now your Metagross is in, your big, exploding, wall-breaking gun, or your Heracross, or whatever. And now you have the potential to make things happen. Since Celebi does not invite Skarmory in to spike on it all the livelong day, I mean, you can, but you're going to spike or you're going to phase it, not both. So, also worth mentioning that Modest is an option, but most players don't use that. Yeah, this set is also more Dugtrio prone, so in addition to, and obviously doesn't really ward off things like Snorlax, so that is something to keep in mind. But yeah, and the removal of Blissey is on more especially offensive teams with things like Jirachi and Suicune. So you have something like Gengar or Regice that baits in Blissey, and then you boom, and then you dug, or maybe you somehow dug it without even needing to sacrifice something. But and then your special guns are really really scary. Yeah, Celebi is very strong in this role, and is a cornerstone of many teams. So now that I've mentioned, Heracross and Celebi on the same team, and like Jirachi as well, and Dugtrio, I should mention Celebi is part of a notable ADV offense strategy. You might notice a lot of offensive teams just kind of get repeatedly picked off against Dugtrio. Now, out offensing them is one thing. Yeah, like you can send in Celebi on the Dugtrio Earthquake, or after Dugtrio's Earthquake something, and keep attacking, and then when the HP bugs, you can keep attacking with something else, like Heracross. But Generally, that kill for kill format can be good. Some players do use that. But Celebi is notable because alongside Doug Trio, which you also like for tapping Blissey, then you can force the other Doug Trio to lock in HP Bug, and then your own will be able to dispatch it. So, yeah, magic. That is a very common combination. Heracross is the same with forcing the other Doug Trio Aerial Ace. And sometimes you guys can do it. These two can do it for each other, so that's notable. Yeah, other than that, it's a straight ahead sweeper. But it has one more trick up its sleeve, and that is Baton Pass. Now we're getting into Celebi's wilder side. You can say Calm Mind, Giga Drain, HP Fire. Those two are threatening by themselves. But sometimes you don't want to. It's tough to hit Ments on the Switch, uh, and because you don't want to just psychic and die. Nothing else really benefits from it. I mean, Suicune's gonna Ice Beam it regardless. So it would just be a waste of Celebi. What can I do about this? Actually get use out of my Celebi. All right, I can Baton Pass. Worth mentioning that the rise in offensive Celebi, alongside other things, but offensive Celebi being a big one, is why Jolly Choice Band Salamence rose in popularity. So it's worth mentioning that you should check your sand damage when Salamence switches into your Celebi. So you don't think, oh, I'm going to Baton Pass this guy, or I'm going to finish him off with Psychic, and then you just get dropped. So, yeah, you can. I mean, do bear in mind, you will be Baton Passing and Intimidate, but since you're passing Calm Mind, ideally, that's not the worst thing in the world if you send him off to a Suicune or something. But yeah, you can make your teammates' lives a lot easier. I mean, you can already think of a whole host of applications of how dangerous passing Calm Mind can be. Um, like, if you take a beating setting up to +6, and then you pass it off to your Suicune, who comes in against the Blissey and is healthy, then that's a lot easier than Suicune setting up to +6 and trying to beat the Blissey. Because it's not like it's getting uncontested +6. So things of that nature. Oh, Baton Pass can also bait in Skarmory, or not Skarmory. I mean Skarmory, yeah, we'll get to that. But on this kind of set, ideally you're baiting in like T-Tar, Blissey, maybe like Jirachi and Metagross, and that's makes a good partner with Doug Trio. So, yeah, that's pretty much this variant of Celebi. Here's another offensive variant of Celebi. I mean, it's a defensive set that enables a very specific kind of offense. Now, you're familiar with Magneton physical offense teams, I'm sure. You Magneton the Skarmory, and then you just wail on things with your Metagross, Salamence, Heracross, Guitar, Gyarados, whatever. Sometimes you're like, ah, man, I'm lacking in power. What do? Oh, these water types are ruining my day. I'm strong, but I'm not strong enough. What do? Enter Celebi. Well, it's certainly not going to make your life against Doug Trio any easier since those teams are already strapped for slots enough without, having an anti-Doug Trio strategy. They just kind of bulk up and do the best they can with their game plan and how they're going to maneuver around the Doug Trio itself rather than removing it from the game, things like Agility, Metagross. But with the bulk, then this thing can be a game ender. So generally, you're going to run, you can run speed, 140, 8 for Ments, that's the golden standard with max HP, and it'll generally do enough with this. You can run slower to have more bulk or whatever, but yeah, this is pretty simple. After you've Magnetoned the Skarmory, perhaps because Celebi Baton passed out of it, then you get your physical guy in, and then you bait in the water, your Pert, Milo, Suicune, whatever. And then Celebi enters easily, and Swords dances on whatever comes in, Baton passes, and that could be the game right there. You could give your Agility Metagross +2 attack alongside a Lumberry. It's not getting statused, and boom, But anything likes a free Swords Dance, of course. So, I mean, even Swampert, you give +2 attack with Swampert. Blissey doesn't counter it anymore. So, yeah, BP Celebi is very dangerous. Of course, you're thinking, well, it can't be that easy. Phasing exists. Roar, Whirlwind. Skarmory's not going to be an issue, as we already went over. However, what could be an issue is Roar on other Pokemon. For example, Zapdos and Tyranitar are very common. Then they tend to run Roar. And so sometimes even Swampert does. Suicune does too. So the answer to that is in Celebi's other two moves. Sometimes it runs Recover, But and then it runs an attacking move, and that attacking move is the secret to success. Now, recover is it's so you can try this. It's not like a one and done kind of deal. Like if a belly drum Smeargle fails to baton pass successfully, then that's it. The game may as well be over. But with Celebi, you can make it reliable. That's why Celebi is so dangerous. So the last move can be hidden power fighting because Granitar is a prime target, and you just smack it. Of course, it can also run, and beating up on Snorlax is also nice. Shadow Ball is also an option because Gengar is annoying and tries to taunt, so you can't baton pass in the first place, and just Gengar, the worst. So that is an option. You could also ditch recover if you're thinking, hey, I'm not going to switch this into a lot of water type ice beams ideally. Maybe I pivot to get in on the earthquake and at HP fighting, and you run 2 attacks, so you're ready for everything. I mean, Roar Zapdos and Roar Suicune are going to be annoying, but they're also really not doing that much damage. So you can probably just SD and hit them, and eventually they're going to be forced to rest. That works better if you use recover though, because unless you manage to get Mag in on the Skarm as it came in, then they're probably going to have a spike, and that 12% can go a long way. Celebi being affected by Sandstorm is one of its few deficiencies, and is how many teams try to exploit it. As notable with the offensive set, which is why I said you got to get it in there before they've already got their spikes up. Because I mean, Jirachi, compare it with Jirachi, who's like, yeah, I mean these spikes are kind of annoying, but I'll get it back in a few turns with leftovers, so not that big a deal. Celebi's got Giga Drain, which is nice, but it's not quite the same. So yeah, that's also notable. But yeah, recover and HP fighting. Not all Tyranitar run. I mean, if you're running SD Pass Celebi, you're probably taking a little bit of a gamble. So you might be thinking, well, T-Tar just shouldn't have Roar then. I hope not, because I mean, it's not the most common move on Tyranitar, so it's not unexpected. And even then, even if they do have that phaser that's going to stop you, that's not necessarily the end of the game. You can still use your Celebi to stonewall that annoying wall, and then you baton pass out as the Tyranitar comes in, and then you use your offensive Pokemon that you would be passing to, let's say Metagross, that's going to be a threat anyway. Celebi is not essential to the entire team functioning. It just helps it function at a higher level, if that makes sense. Like Metagross is already really scary. It's just that with help from Celebi, it could potentially end the game immediately. But with Magneton, then you should already have an offensive plan that's similar to other physical Magneton teams. So yeah, I think that's it. Also, technically, since we're mentioning mostly everything, then this off pure SD Celebi set kind of exists. It's not that good, but it's okay. It's definitely going to catch someone off guard. So, but yeah, SD Pass is the notable Celebi set within the advanced meta that you have to know about, not SD, pure SD. Finally, more Baton Pass action. Yes, this move is very good. This is a newer set, and it excels on trap teams. And now that I'm mentioning that, then I should mention that the pure defensive set can also run Baton Pass in this last move, with your Psychic, Recover Leech, and a stab move, and then also Baton Pass. Useful because you know how Celebi's baiting in Magneton, or not Magneton, Skarmory, T-Tar, Blissey, things like that, stuff that gets trapped. Jirachi and Metagross. And yeah, it makes it a prime candidate on trap teams, especially with how good it is at warding off things like Snorlax and Waters that would otherwise be annoying. So this set really goes all the way because you're not just being a defensive. I mean, you're giving up an attacking option. But the substitute means that the max HP investment is very crucial because it means you can pass 101 HP substitutes, meaning that if you pass to, say, well, I mean, if whatever you pass to, I mean, if you pass to Salamence and Blissey just uses Ice Beam, then it obviously doesn't get you anywhere. But if you pass to something like Metagross, then the substitute, or Snorlax, then the substitute will remain intact. So, yeah, or Tyranitar, whatever. You see the idea. Because the substitute that is passed is Celebi's, so the thing receiving it does not need to have 1 HP as well. Anyway, this set is pretty religiously fast because you can sub in the face of annoying things like Mixed Men's Fire Blast. Sub stalling annoying attacks is also uh, very nice. Like, um, here's a ridiculous example: a +6 Calm Mind Blissey. Um, and it's already used some ice beams, and you're just sub stalling because if it has to use Thunderbolt, then that's a dumb example. But I'm thinking more like Mixed Mind's Fire Blast, or like in a pinch, Heracross Megahorn. Um, it's not a strategy to rely on, but it is an option. And yeah, leech it helps you more offensively leech seed. Like for example, a leech seed Celebi that leeches, say, an HP bug CB tar, um, like a Calm Mind leech variant, it can't stay in there. But the sub seed variant, it can stay in. It'll just sub, and it sees what the tar locks itself into, and gets more damage on it, and all is well. Things like that. So you can see how that works. And Baton Pass also helps you get your trappers in safely, of course. And it really, Baton Pass Celebi, not necessarily sub, but often sub. It's very common on trap teams with Mag Trio, meaning Magneton and Doug Trio. And then, with the removal of Skarm, T-Tar, Jirachi, Metagross, other Celebi, of course, um, Blissey, then you can really become scary with Suicune and Snorlax of your own, or things like Choice Band Salamence. I mean, Celebi, Baton Passing to Magneton opens up a lot of things, as we've already gone over. But yeah, like the classic trap team, I believe made, or maybe it was Fear, one of the two, is like Band Mence, Baton Pass Celebi, Milo, Mag, Doug, and Snorlax. I mean, you can throw your clay dolls in there if you really want to just completely destroy Skarmory. And uh, sorry about that. Yeah, if you want to just completely destroy Skarmory and its spikes, and he, sorry, unexpected visitor. Get Skarm and its spikes, then you throw Claydol in there. But you can also throw like Suicune for more uh, trap victim abuse. Jirachi, it's great. Metagross is really nice over there because of its offensive, defensive utility. Back up against Snorlax in case your Celebi gets Doug Trio'd. You gotta have a plan for that, or at least have a plan to avoid that if your team really angers on Celebi so strongly. I think that's a good lesson to take away with Celebi in general. It is good to rely on it because it's reliable, of course, but you do have to be very cognizant of its flaws because they are high level strategies that are very common and very powerful. So it's not the most unrealistic thing that your Celebi would get picked off by a Doug Trio because it was in range thanks to the spikes and Sandstorm neutering its leftovers. So yeah, I think that's about that. Yeah, this set is pretty much always paired with at least one trapper, usually Magneton if it is the sole trapper. Um, but yeah, so we did not go over the viability rankings yet, which was uncharacteristic of me. But yeah, Celebi is firmly entrenched in the A minus rank. Functions in Tyranitar's metagame just fine. I mean, this is some elite company. Celebi, Suicune, Jirachi, Snorlax, Salamence, Dugtrio, those are major, major players. This isn't alphabetically organized either, so Celebi is at the very top. So, um, yeah, it's not quite at the consistent game-breaking level of those above it, but it's still pretty much premier advanced threat, or a premier advanced threat that you have to be aware of and take into account. Because let me tell you, Celebi, I mean, this holds true for a lot of the better advanced Pokemon, but like something like, let's say, um, take your pick of these Pokemon, you can kind of forget about them, or you'll naturally check them most of the time. I mean, they have their niches, which is why they're here. But generally, you'll be able to deal with them one way or another. But if you're just totally left exposed to a certain Celebi variant, especially the Baton Pass ones, I mean, this one you'll probably be able to naturally hold off for at least for a little bit. A good player wielding it knows, with a good team, knows how to make magic happen. So that's not as much of a done deal. But the Baton Pass variants can get out of hand very quickly, and if you're running one of those really, really fat teams that just kind of does all its damage passively, Celebi's just going to laugh in your face because you can't hurt it that much, and it sets up and then it sends it off to someone else. So, yeah, scary stuff. So, we will now do a little demonstration of common teams with each set, or team outlines at least. So, the defensive set. So we're going to do defensive / Calm Mind Leech because they are very similar. Offensive Calm Mind and Baton Pass because they are similar. SD Pass and Subseed. So starting with defensive. Defensive can be pretty much, I mean, I guess a lot of its sets kind of cross over, so you're going to have to maybe not take this with a grain of salt, but use common sense and seeing how it could apply to other teams. This is obviously not set in stone in any way, so we're just going to go with a standard stabs set that's defensive, and I think we're going to go with a non-Blissey team because it'll show off Calm. And something cool Celebi can do with Calm is ward off Gengar since it has natural cure for Will-O-Wisp. And that means this Tyranitar does not have to run a Pursuit set. Instead, it can run the far more fearsome Physical set, which pressures pretty much the entire tier and can help be an active yet safe defensive way of holding threats off. Or you can make this a Dragon Dancer. Either or. Dragon Dance, not Claw. But basically the idea of Calm Celebi here is that you don't have to rely on T-Tar to remove Gengar as most teams would. And the last here can be, Zapdos, or it can be Arrow, or it can be Blissey, and you just make the Celebi bold. But generally, Heracross is really scary here, as you can tell. And if you don't have the Blissey, then, Calm is good, but offensive Suicune is going to be stronger after Calm Mind, so you might have to go up to 270, which is not a bad idea to begin with. So you're going to have your Dugtrio Bulk. I'm never sure if Timid or Calm is more, since the stats are the same, so I'll leave it up to you guys to play around with it. But this would generally get the job done. You got your spikes, you got your Dragon Dancer, your physical guy. You have your speed, and then you have your defensive set, and then Dugtrio works well here as well. Of course, you might also notice that opposing Skarmory can be quite annoying. So what some teams do is they run Magneton instead of a Gengar. Now this makes Moltres in particular very scary. You got to watch out when you're stacking these kinds of Pokemon because it's like 4 Pokemon obliterated by Moltres. So maybe your T-Tar would run Pursuit, and maybe this could become like a Subseeder or like a fast variant, basically that can that has some leeway against Moltres rather than being completely helpless. But not that Gengar's really a counter, but it's faster, whereas Magneton just gets melted. Then you might have an offensive abuser of it here, like CB Ments. So, yeah, you'll also notice this will also make it worse against Dugtrio. So this T-Tar, no QTDD stuff. Whatever set it ends up being, it's got to be max HP. Gotta be protected against Dugtrio. So yeah, that's an example of offensive. This can also be an example of Subseed. This can also be an Arrow. Subseed also helps against like Mixed Ments, stuff like that. Protecting Skarm from Mag, so you can get it with your own Mag, things of that nature. Of course, if you're not running a Celebi that can actually attack Gengar at all, then this would probably become Pursuit. So things like that, yeah. So that's defensive for you. A rough outline. I mean, you can do things like Zapdos and Dugtrio, and just if you're confident that this can bait it with an HP Fire or things like that. So yeah, basically this is a rough outline, and of course you can throw Blissey in there, like we said, and yeah, defensive overlap is what the name is. What you would like with Celebi, so you can mix up how you play against certain threats and preserve what you really need for the other threat. For example, against a combo of Metagross and Tyranitar, let's say Scarm gets Magneton, you might want to ward off Metagross with Celebi if you can, so it can't explode on Swampert and then leave you open to Tyranitar. I mean, I recognize that there's a Dugtrio there, but it's more of a general idea. All right, so there's that. This could also easily be Calm Mind with Blissey or Zapdos as special defensive backup. You get the idea. Yeah, that's defensive and Calm Mind. So now let's go to the offensive sets. Actually, since it's shorter, I'm just gonna stick with the Subseed thing. I think we already kind of went over it, but Dugtrio, this is gonna be Sub, Pass, Timid, so it's gonna be fast, and bulk on it can really vary. Most people like some defense for Dugtrio and Snorlax, but Magneton, and then you got your Snorlax. Snorlax is a primary beneficiary of it, and then you can run like Suicune to Calm Mind and whatever filler, or it can be Milotic to have more longevity. You can run things like Bandiments. You can run Claydol for total forget your hazards. Yeah, it can be, but this is mostly what you'll see. I mean, you can also use things like Wish, Calm Mind, Jirachi, which is also appreciative of the trap support and can keep you even more healthy than Leech Seed. Yeah, so Celebi and Milotic also have the nice benefit of having a total of 64 recovers between them, which is nice in longer games. So, I mean, as long as your strategy isn't to switch stall the opponent to death, because with Spike Set that won't work, even though it'll take a million turns. But you get that. So that's an example of the trap stuff, the pure trap stuff, and you already saw how Subseed Celebi can work on a more offensive Scarm team, or Mag team with Mag, Scarm, T-Tar, and like Bandments or Arrow. I recognize that's not quite like pure offense, but you get the idea. Speaking of offense, then we're gonna go to our fighting. So this would become Jolly. We'll say HP Fighting or Shadow Ball because we're not going to go over the perfect optimization for whether this team would prefer HP Fighting or Shadow Ball. Generally, I guess you would say Shadow Ball, just because because of the principle of earlier, if T-Tars roar, then we'll still be threatening what Gengar is one of these teams' biggest enemies. So Mag, Snorlax, and then you put in, maybe your Swampert, maybe Metagross, maybe your Salic, Heracross, and Mence, which can also DD. Lax because it's good specially against things like Starmie, which these guys hate. And you can throw in, your Tyranitar with DD. You can throw in Gyarados. Basically, all your usual physical suspects, except in this case, you've got a Celebi that can help out against water types. So usually, Salamence is the beneficiary of that, and make these guys a lot scarier. This is going to have agility because, as you can see, Dugtrio is death. Here, so you really have to be very careful, yeah, don't worry about this being quote-unquote walled by Zapdos, because if you pass it Swords Dance, then Meteor Mash will cleave right through it. All right, and this can be rest or be usually offensive, because Celebi or you want to really smack that Gengar, put Bulky Gar in range for Heracross and DD Mence. So Matadors can also run Pursuit, but on these kinds of teams, but with Celebi, you're going to abuse the rather than trap Gengar and make everything perfect, then you just work with what you got. This can even run Lumberry. So and if Snorlax takes a hit, then it takes a hit, but we can still hit things decently hard. As long as Gengar's not in the picture, then even self-destruct will at least chunk something, even when burned. So maybe you don't go all the way with Adamant, but you have to have a good chunk here. We're not really trying to defend on this team. All right, so that's SD Pass, and now we get to the most varied, I guess, or the most. Well, this. Actually, ignore that. I'm sorry. All right, so Calm Mind, Giga Drain, Hidden Power Fire, and then either Psychic or Baton Pass. Standard is Psychic, so we are going to start off with that. The traditional team that this would fit on would be something like Suicune, offensive. Dugtrio, remember, Celebi bait Dugtrio, Dugtrio trap it back, and now Tyranitar and Jirachi are happy. This is something like Jabba the Griffin's old team, and his old team was this, except it let off with Suicune. Yeah, so, as you see, T-Tar here baits in something like Pert, Celebi gets the offense going. You don't really want it. A lot of players will run this with like Zapdos because as you'll notice, then Skarmory can take a hit and with special defense, get a spike up and Whirlwind if it's one-on-one with these guys. So Zapdos starts it off without that being a problem. It can also Baton Pass into Dugtrio. And you might also be thinking, well, can Celebi Baton Pass here? Yes, it can, as can Zapdos. So you can have a little Calm Mind chain here. Or a little Baton Pass chain, yeah. So Calm Mind, you can run Hydro, Ice Beam, or for things like Calm Mind's weakness slowing you down, or you can run HP Grass for safety, things like that. Yeah, so Doug is Doug, and this can be DD or whatever, and this is also offensive Calm Mind. So you can run like Ice Punch because your Suicune's offensive, so you don't want to give T-Tar too much leeway. However, while this team does not necessarily struggle with Snorlax that much because of Tyranitar's Sand, meaning, remember, just how Celebi is affected strongly by Sand, making it finished off a lot more easily than it is without it, which also applies to Suicune. It also applies to Snorlax. So, like the more traditional Calm Mind team, which looks something like this, and this is really going to hate Lax. Like P2 is a new addition, which means that you don't even necessarily have to run Dugtrio. You don't even have to trap the opposing Dugtrio with your own, and you also really don't even have to lock it into HP Bug. If it revenges Raikou, then P2 comes in and recovers stalls. That is optimal because they can live in Ice Beam. So. And it's also nice because it counters the heck out of Mence. Celebi gets some freedom there. You got to be careful of Skarm, of course, but you get the idea. So this is that kind of Calm Mind team. You can throw other things in here, but you get the gist. This is your, pure Calm Mind kind of thing. You can throw in Tyranitar here and just say, hey, I'm going to overwhelm with just the special guys. Like if you've got a Baton, like if you've got Rest, Suicune, and like offensive Rest is totally viable just for sitting on Blissey. And I'm going to Baton Pass with the Celebi, things like that. But generally, this is the pure Calm Mind. Now, this isn't necessarily on just Calm Mind teams. The teams I just showed you, they had 3 to 4 Calm Minders. But it also fits in on teams with less. So we're going to look at those now. Now, the mixed offenses that I've gone over in the Tyranitar and Salamence videos, you can refer to those for a general idea of those bulky, mostly physical hitters. It's mostly physical guys or physical and mixed guys like Metagross, T-Star, Salamence, Swampert, Snorlax, and then like maybe Zapdos on the special side because Zapdos is amazing. But Celebi also fits in. Those teams are often crushed by Dugtrio, and Celebi helps bait them in. It works with Heracross too, so you have things like this, But instead of going the Jirachi Suicune special route, you got Metagross, Swampert. And because you don't like Skarmory, then Zapdos comes in to help out. This is just an off the top of my head. You can also go things like Heracross. This is a bad example because the ground resists are Celebi and Heracross, so something like Flygon would be death. But you get the general idea. Like Salamence can also appear. I mean, it doesn't have to just be baiting Dugtrio. It can. It's just a good offensive Pokemon, and it does the zap. It kind of does what Zapdos does in that it switches into waters and it baits in like the soft special wall for your big physical guys to come in on. Um, and if they don't have that dedicated special wall, then it can very easily cleave through those teams, those Spikes teams that sacrifice pure defense for some more offense. Like for example, like we said earlier, T-Tar, Skarmory, Pert, and then throw in like Zapdos and something. Basically, when there's not a Blissey, then it's going to be really hard to wall. You just got to get it in offensively. So something like a mixed Tyranitar that um, it's going to prevent Skarmory from spiking all over it, and or even something like a taunt DD tar that means Skarmory's not the counter, Swampert is, Celebi comes in, offense begins. That kind of thing. You can throw your Zapdoses in here and that kind of thing. And you can run P2 and you can run Doug and yeah. So yeah, Metagross is obviously another great candidate for that kind of thing. So I'm just really throwing folks around here, but you get the idea. All right, so I think that should cover what Celebi does and Advance OU, why it is good. Yeah, to recap, we're going to look at some crucial matchups. Tyranitar with the defensive set. The sets, I guess we've already kind of covered these, but let's go over the big ones. There aren't that many. T-Tar, defensive set, then yeah, they face off quite a bit because T-Tar might even swallow a Leech Seed just to threaten it out with HP Bug if it's on the physical side or Crunch on the special side. Notable, especially because it can Pursuit. However, a Baton Pass Celebi has nothing to fear from Pursuit. So keep that in mind. Sometimes in a pinch, you will even see Calm Mind Leech Celebi just not being able to touch T-Tar with an attack, but just Calm Minding and leeching and boosting and recovering in its face. Gotta be careful because he has a lot of chances to get nasty crits and drops. But yeah, it can be done. Especially nice if with Spikes, of course. Spikes makes Leech Seed so much more nasty. 12% can be annoying against teams without recovery, kind of like these teams. Imagine if there's no Celebi, then yeah, switching into Leech Seed would be obnoxious. But in a more prolonged game, then you want it to count. So you want all the damage you can get. Even you might think, well, if he's going to stall out my leeches with pressure Zapdos with rest, then that's not going to do much. Well, yeah, you say that, and then you switch to your Tyranitar on the Zapdos, and suddenly the Swampert is not as comfortable switching into it. The Zapdos' partner Swampert is not as comfortable switching into Tyranitar with spikes down. That kind of thing. Yeah. So Tyranitar defensive sets, you can blanket you can blanket sometimes, but somebody has a lot of tools to get really nasty. I mean, HP Grass does a lot of damage. And even just Leech Seed can potentially be really bad. But Tyranitar generally tries to come in on a recover if it can help it. And offensive sets, Giga Drain doesn't quite kill, but it's going to do a ton after Calm Mind. So you will outrun. Well, I mean, some players like to creep a little on their bulky offensive Celebis. The ones that hit, this number. They try to go a little higher for the DD Tar that hangs around this speed stat, i.e. hitting 300 after a dance. Sometimes they go a little higher, so Celebi goes a little higher to beat that. But that scenario is rare these days, so you should probably count on the DD Tar that's trying to boost in your face actually being able to outrun you after just one. Yeah, Gengar. Oh, and we've already gone over the Baton Pass thing with Source. Gengar is annoying because Taunt and Will-O-Wisp and super effective Ice or Fire Punch and withstand spikes that can be really dirty. So Celebi can't be your sole counter if your other Pokemon are just totally destroyed by it, but it can help you ward it off. Since it does a natural cure, it has Recover, and it has Stab Psychic to scare Gengar away. I mean, Gengar is pretty menacing, but when you actually hit him, then he becomes a lot scarier. So, I mean, sometimes if he's brave or if it's really crucial that he brings your Celebi down just so he can spam Earthquake with Aerodactyl or something, then yeah, he might go for a Brave Taunt, but otherwise, no. Metagross, then so the specially defensive set goes a long way. The bold set, not something you really want to throw into it with a bunch of spikes down, but it is worth. It's a good backup. It's not totally destroyed by it. Something very important to note with Leech Celebi, you gotta be wary of how you're going to play around Scarm. You can't always fit in Magneton, so sometimes you're going to have to be spamming Recover a lot, or Leech Seed and then Recover, just so because otherwise you will be overwhelmed very quickly. So that's something to remember. Um, but luckily you have 32 Recovers, so you're not going to be burning through it like say a Blissey would with Soft Boiled. Only got 16. If it's getting forced to recover all the time, then that's really not good. Anyway, yeah, Metagross, we've gone over Leech and how the defensive sets can pick it off with Reflect, or pick it up with HP Fire, can annoy it to death with Reflect. Even Sub can get in its way. And offensive sets, you're going to want to chip this thing before. I mean, plus one HP Fire does a lot more than you'd think. But it also doesn't quite, scare it to the point of nearly being O-code. So you're going to want to do some damage to it. Luckily, something like Snorlax will bait it in and, Focus Punch, and there you go. There's the damage you need. Now all you need is opportunity for the Calm Mind. Yep, I think that sums it up. Swampert, we've gone over that relationship with how sometimes it stays and then tries to Ice Beam. So how you can dance around that. Now, if you're an offensive Celebi set, you don't really want to come into even the defensive sets Ice Beams too many times because that severely cuts into your bulk. So you prefer to come in on an Earthquake, or ideally you come in on a Protect. That's just perfect. But yeah, also worth mentioning that Leech Celebi or defensive Leech Celebi does a good job at stalling out Endeavor Swampert. You've got 32 Recovers, and Endeavor and Ice Beam combined are 24. So maybe don't burn through all of them if you're going to need them, but it's a very, very solid counter unless you get very unlucky. Because even one freeze, unless there's a bunch of spikes on the field, which yeah, sometimes that's going to be a problem, but usually you'll be able to dance around it. So that's very notable. That's something Endeavor Swampert users have to keep in mind. Zapdos, with spikes down and Roar and Toxic and sometimes even HP Ice, it can be very obnoxious, but generally Celebi is a common Zapdos. Of course, sometimes Res Zapdos is a common defensive Celebi. It burns into PP and doesn't care about spikes. And against the Baton Pass variant, then Roar Zapdos is also quite annoying, but it also takes damage that it's not healing off without resting. So that is worth bearing in mind. Skarmory, we've already gone over the Magneton Baton Pass relationship, and the defensive HP Fire alongside Leech Seed, or the Leech Seed Calm Mind, or the offensive Calm Mind HP Fire thing. But generally, you're going to want to get out in front of the Skarmory, and Celebi going to Mat is one of the most ADV plays there is. Blissey, only really good for more than like a turn, if that, against like the pure offensive set, because Baton Pass will just turn it on its head. Whether Swords Dance or Calm Mind. Although Swords Dance is usually easier to see coming because of all the Magneton, and all the physical attackers. So you see a Celebi and you know what's happening there. But yeah, then there's the defensive sets, which I mean they can kind of stall Leech Seed, but they also give Celebi a lot of health back if it needs it, and it's generally a nice place for Celebi to heal up. So, but that's kind of a weird. I mean, Bliss loses one-on-one, but it's also not trying to beat it one-on-one usually. I mean, Toxic will suck, but yeah, that's a weird one-off that doesn't really come to mind. It's not really a matchup that decides games right then and there. It's a place for both of them to kind of heal before they switch out. So Celebi on Celebi is weird. It's set dependent. So although I will say that the defensive Celebi sets that make up those really fat teams that try to kind of auto win, with their Mag, Claydol, Snorlax stuff, then Baton Pass Celebi excels in shredding them. So Suicune, we've already gone over. Defensive is good against defensive Coon, but not good against offensive. So sometimes you might want to invest in some speed investment, which will also, and you'll still be good against the defensive sets. HP Cross helps to pound them when needed, And offensive sets are great Suicune partners. For the special assault, and Celebi helps Suicune out against Zapdos. Uh, yeah, stuff like that. Sometimes Metagross booming on one can be a blessing in disguise because it means it can't boom on the other because it's uh, common for it to, like, if they've got Metagross and Tyranitar and you've got a Calm Mind Celebi, and you've got, well, a lot of that depends on sets. I'm sorry, but the general idea is if they've got a Metagross that can handle a +1 hit from Celebi and Suicune, but not both, then your Suicune would be ideal there. Um, it helps out the others. That was messy and disjointed. I'm sorry. This has been going on for a while. Yeah, Jirachi, same thing. Wish will stall out Leech eventually, but with spikes down, spikes are very crucial to Leech Seed, not just being a blob. Um, or a blob that's only good in some matchups. But with spikes, it's very annoying. And Jirachi doesn't have infinite wishes either. Equal PP to Leech Seed, in fact. And the offensive sets, I mean, um, yeah, they work well together, and they don't really clash very much. Since Jirachi just kind of is faster because it doesn't have to run a 30 speed IV and isn't affected by sand. So, um, yeah. Snorlax, Celebi is very off on the defensive side. It's often tasked with switching into Snorlax, especially useful because sometimes it's Celebi's teammate Skarmory will get Magneton, and you don't want to be switching Tyranitar into a bunch of Earthquakes or, God forbid, a Focus Punch. So Celebi helps there. Yeah, so mixed sets, or it can force self-destruct stocks and blowing up on it very often. And Reflect stops even that. I mean, not after multiple curses, but if it's just one, i.e., if you've pressured it to the point where it's spikes in sand, that where it's in danger of going down from attacks, then it's not going to bother. It's not going to think it's safe enough to throw up several curses. So that's a little specific. Leech Seed also gives Celebi back a ton of health, which is very useful. But yeah, if Leech Seed is your only Snorlax countermeasure, then you're going to be in trouble. So don't fall into that trap. And offensive sets, offensive Celebi likes Snorlax sleeping ideally. It's a bulky rest set, and in sand because Celebi is going to be similarly KO'd by Lax, whereas sand helps Lax go down a lot quicker. So yeah, there's that. Salamence, one of Celebi's greatest enemies. Psychic on the Switch is good, but if it's coming in, if it's a complicated relationship because Salamence is often paired with something like Wish Blissey just for being able to switch in and really threaten Celebi over and over. Because otherwise, Leech Seed, Celebi wins that in the long term if it's got a partner, especially since it's switching. Like Swampert doesn't love taking the full brunt of a banded HP flying, but with Leech Seed, it's kind of like, yeah, I can do this. So that's another example of the importance of not coming directly into Leech Seed if you can help it. So, uh, yeah, and offensive Celebi can smack it with Psychic, maybe outrun it, but got to be careful of the Jolly Choice Bander. So watch your sand turns. And yeah, also a prime offensive partner if it's SD passing to the Dragon Dancer. Yeah, Dugtrio, great Celebi partner, huge thorn in its side, but Celebi can either bait it for its teammates or even survive it and take it out. Like the Calm Mind sets, the offensive ones, if you run Modest, it's also worth thinking about going really slow, and it's investing in bulk can be a game changer if your team cannot afford to really go. I mean, if that's going to be your Dugtrio measure, not if your team can't afford to be better against Dugtrio. I mean, I guess that makes sense, but that makes it sound more like I'm saying, well, my team is my super special, perfect team, just cannot afford to be good against Dugtrio, which is nonsense. You've got to be good against Dugtrio. So it's more, consider this as a way of handling Dugtrio better. Starmie, bold Celebi does not really love switching to Starmie with spikes and sand. Recurring theme, but the calm set, I mean, still not ideal, but it helps. It will very often be engaged in a Milotic like stall war against Celebi's 16 attacking PP. And the Sturdy 2 recovers, but the threat is more in the crit, or even worse, the freezes. I mean, it can handle a crit if it's bulky enough. It's the freeze that you gotta be worried about. Um, yeah. because then it can take out another Pokemon, and if they're spiked, then it can be messy, things of that nature. Yeah, offensive sets don't really have a much of a relationship. I mean, Starmie's Ice Beam does a lot more, but Giga Drain also heals Celebi a lot, and after a Calm Mind, then Celebi comes out on top. So, Magneton, great partner. That's pretty much it. Claydol, sometimes a good partner, sometimes contributes to making the team run over by offensive threats that the big blob of a team, neglected to cover on account of Skarmory being horrible to face. I mean, yeah, Arrow is one of the things that likes to switch in and scare Celebi out against offensive Calm Mind sets. It's not uncommon for it to swallow a hit just so that Celebi doesn't take out something else, which you can spin to your advantage because while Arrow's health usually isn't crucial, if you can make that situation happen multiple times, easier said than done, but then the opponent will be on the ropes. Jolteon, not much of a relationship. I guess you'll be countering it because it usually runs. I mean, even if it does run HP Ice, and Celebi is generally preferred as the counter because you don't want Swampert being roared out and Celebi can heal up. So roared out with spikes down for the Arrow or T-Tar partner. I mean, so yeah, Jolteon's HP Ice isn't that strong, so even if you are bold Celebi, you'll be able to take it. Heracross, big reason for the speed EVs, big reason, and Psychic, of course. Offensive sets, totally different story, obviously. But yeah, Heracross is one of the biggest threats to those fat defensive cores just because of how brutally it absolutely tears Celebi apart. Moltres is kind of like the special version of Heracross. Doesn't care about spikes, doesn't really fear Psychic. So the only way Celebi really beats Moltres is if it's already like taking a hit and Celebi is fast and finishes it off. I mean, if you Calm Mind on the switch, then Celebi and are faster, then you can swallow a Fire Blast to a KO. Generally not something you prefer to happen, of course. Moltres definitely a big threat to most cores featuring Celebi. Most defensive cores featuring Celebi. Because unless you got a Blissey, then that's a very specific ask. Because Celebi sometimes steps onto teams to provide Blissey-like functions in checking Suicune, and Zapdos, while also handling things like Metagross and Snorlax that Blissey could never dream of. So it's a byproduct of that. Down the road, Milotic, the defensive sets kind of stall each other. Its Ice Beam hits way harder than Swampert, so you got to be careful. Don't want to swallow too many of those, especially if you the offensive set. Switching out a Surf, or better yet, a Recover and go to town. But yeah, that's very worth mentioning. Flygon runs HP Bug primarily because Celebi is annoying, and the Jolly 4-attack set, the old standard anyway, will be a thorn in Celebi's side. However, Celebi's massive natural bulk is often enough to swallow one. So if you really need that damage on it for your T-Tar to clean up, then it's up to you to make that call. But yeah, the Timid versus Jolly is also worth it. Keep an eye on your leftovers. Cloyster, not much of a relationship, because it doesn't really come in on Celebi, and Celebi doesn't. You don't really see them that much together. Cloyster is more on like mixed offense. Those teams are already strapped for slots, and then Celebi kind of just makes it flimsier against things like Snorlax. So you want to. Whereas Metagross and company, then they're more forceful thanks to explosion and greater overall bulk and just greater overall power as well. So harder to wall. Yeah, Fortress, big reason for HP Fire. Don't Sometimes you'll see it on super stalls. Sometimes it's really slow ones. You'll see it together. That's pretty much it. I think that relationship is fairly self-explanatory, especially with Baton passing to Magneton, who runs HP Fire. P2, not much of a relationship. Gyarados, not much of a relationship, except when Gyarados is sweeping the defensive teams, and Celebi is just one of the victims for HP Flying. However, when the Gyarados eschews HP Flying for HP Flying, because Zapdos and Aerodactyl are the worst, Celebi is the main thing that is really giving problems. Alright, so thank you guys for watching. That is all for today. I hope this was helpful. I hope you take something from this. And yeah, Celebi is really good in advance. Um, they're one of the most crucial Pokemon in the metagame, and you should keep it in mind when building your teams. I'm just spouting cliches at this point. But yeah, thank you guys, and I will catch you next time.